thanks for joining us today on Real Estate Insiders TV. I'm Danny Poulos from the Elite Lending Team at Femby. Joining us this morning is Jen Cunha. She's an attorney and has her own practice in Jupiter, Florida. And we're going to talk about a real niche topic today about the rights of homeowners associations. But that's not all Jen does. So Jen, take a minute. Tell people what you do and how long you've been doing it.
Sure. I'm a lawyer. I've been practicing for about 7 years. I got my start representing tenants against landlords, actually, and then graduated to representing lots of associations. I also represent investors, and of course, I still represent landlords. So it's real estate litigation. If there's a fight about real estate, I pretty much know what to do.
So you're a fighter, okay.
Yeah. If it's peaceful, not so sure.
Okay. So we're going to talk again about a niche topic because everyone is familiar with this situation, the market we've gone through over the last couple of years where associations in some cases have a problem collecting their maintenance fees from people, and people get behind, and I think in a lot of the cases, which you'll explain, they don't really know what to do. So, I mean, is that a typical problem right now of associations not being able to collect their fees?
It's a huge problem. A lot of times associations don't understand that they have the right to go after homeowners. They're nervous, they don't want to sue their neighbors, maybe they think it's really expensive because every time they pick up the phone to call their lawyer, it's another $1,000. They have these fears about doing collections, and as a consequence, the collections just keep mounting. And in today's society, lots of people are not paying their associations. They're not paying the banks, but they're also not paying the associations. So I have some associations that I've recently acquired that are owed up to $1 million. It's a big problem.
And at the same time, they still have to pay all their bills, right?
Yeah,
They've got to keep the water on.
They have to keep the water on. I tell them, listen, if you're going to not pay a bill, don't make it the association. The association can definitely come after you for collections. And
I wonder how desperate these associations get before they finally make the decision to do something about collecting their money. I mean, again, there's bills, there's pools, there's...
Yeah, there definitely are bills. And a lot of times they either get to the point where they're desperate and they're so upside down that maybe they can't even afford to go after collections, or they get some education. They learn, this is what our options are. I mean, our office does complimentary trainings. We have a dozen different courses, but one of them is, what are collections? When does it make sense to engage in collection practices? When does it make sense to step back and actually push the bank and make the bank finish their foreclosure? So education is a big part of making good fiscal choices. Okay,
so one of the options you're a specialist in is homeowners associations actually foreclosing on properties. So explain that. I think a lot of people don't really know how that goes.
Sure. Our practice, of course, focuses and emphasizes on association representation. And when an association is owed money, they have the option of, doing a foreclosure, but it starts with lots of notices. People who are in an association foreclosure really have ignored at least 2 notices and a lien. So their heads are in the sand, or they don't care anymore. When you get to foreclosure, an association foreclosure is maybe 4 to 7 months. I mean, you compare that with a bank foreclosure. Bank foreclosures are averaging 18 months. I have one that's 7 years old.
Right.
And there are ones that are older. So an association that chooses to engage in collection practices, first of all, the accounts will turn around in a minute. I have an association that filed 7 foreclosures a month ago. 5 of them are resolved. 5 of them came to the table and said, oh, I didn't know I hadn't been paying the association. What can we do now?
Something just came to mind. Are some of these properties, is the bank already in foreclosure proceedings before the association comes in? That's
part of a strategy. When we get a new association, we do an account review of every single accounts receivable they have, and we see, is there foreclosure going on with the bank? Where is that bank foreclosure at right now? Does it make sense to push the bank, or does it make sense to do our own because it would be faster? Sometimes the bank foreclosures haven't been started yet, or they're so early in the process that it makes sense to go ahead and start collections on behalf of the association. In other instances, and this is almost a jackpot for an association, you have people who have loan modifications. The association thinks that this person's in foreclosure, so why would we even want to do collections? I have somebody who owes $32,000 and got a loan modification in 2011. And just yesterday they decided, let's try to resolve the account. They want to pay like $150 a month for 20 something years. But honestly, yes, of $32,000, but they're going to. I mean, the association's going to resolve it. People get loan modifications They don't pay the association, and the association thinks that there's nothing they can do.
Okay, so they bring somebody like you in, they decide they're going to foreclose, the end goal being what?
The end goal would be, one of a couple things. First of all, our truest goal is that the homeowners will come to the table. Nobody really wants their house. Honestly, nobody wants the house. The goal is the homeowners will come to the table and say, what can we do to resolve this? Maybe they've ignored all the notices, but now that they know that they've been served with paperwork, they're going to do a repayment agreement, and they'll figure something out, and that's our goal. But secondary to that, the next goal would be a constant revenue stream for associations, which is a viable
Where's that
future.
coming from?
That would be from the foreclosure. So the association does the foreclosure, it goes to auction, maybe the association gets it back. The association can rent it out at market rate, $1,300, $1,500, $2,000 a month sometimes. If they're getting in their pockets, it first goes to back assessments. If $18,000 is owed and you're getting $2,000 a month in 9 months, you've paid off your back assessments. The association also has the right to step into the shoes, basically, of the borrower and do foreclosure defense. Make the bank prove their case. Make the bank prove that they have the note, that they have the mortgage, that the assignments were correct.
I guess the association, now that they're getting that check,
yes.
It's in their best interest to keep the foreclosure by the bank as far away as possible, because then they're going to stop getting it.
Well, there is that, but the idea is that they're getting a check every month, but if they can make the bank prove their case, and sometimes the banks don't have a good case. Sometimes the banks have a bad case. And then in those instances, the association can rent for years and years and years, and sometimes even own it outright if the bank's foreclosure is dismissed by a judge because the bank did a bad job.
Okay, so when we say the association owns it and can rent it out, what about the bank? They're still owed money, right?
Okay, so the way that it works, of course, the bank's mortgage is superior in a sense to the association's right to the property. So you have this umbrella idea that there's a bank out there and it's going to come, it's at the top. But until then, the association has the right to rent it out or to even sell it to investors sometimes, knowing at the back of their mind that at some point the bank is coming. And the bank is going generally to come. When the bank comes, first of all, there's this concept called safe harbor. And sometimes it's confusing to board members because safe harbor is a term that they've heard before, but they don't really know what it means. Safe harbor is the idea that a bank or a lender is only entitled to 1 year of assessments or 1% of the original mortgage at the end of the foreclosure. Sometimes banks throw their weight around and they're not entitled to safe harbor, but they pretend they are. So you kind of, you try to make them prove that they're entitled to it. And if they're not, then you get the full amount. So at the end of the foreclosure, the bank comes, the bank takes the property back. One thing to note is that the association will not be allowed to collect assessments against whoever purchases that foreclosure from the time they own the property until the bank foreclosure finishes. Make sense?
Yes, but if there was money owed prior to that?
Prior to that, yes.
So they can get that from the bank when the bank forecloses, technically?
Technically, yes. They have to apply whatever money they make to the back assessments, but whatever is remaining is owed, yes.
Gotcha.
And then, tenants are absolutely protected. There's a Protecting Tenants in Foreclosure Act, so if the association puts in tenants, they don't have to be nervous that the tenants are going to be in trouble in a couple months or a couple years.
Good point.
The lease is going to be honored as long as it's a bona fide, arm's-length transaction, and it's market rate.
That's market rate, right.
And then the lease is honored. Very often the banks pay people to move.
Well, all right, so let's talk about what happens to these associations if they don't do this. They don't call someone like you to come and look at their accounts and get their money. So people just keep owing them money and owing them money, and their bills can be paid. What other options do they have? What other really wrong options do they have? Or consequences?
Some of the consequences, like I said, I have a couple of associations that are owed more than $500,000, and it cripples them a little bit because they don't have the money to repave the roads or fix the pool. Some of them don't have working pools. The worst case scenario, and I have seen this very close to happening, it's never happened to my associations, and some of the associations I've walked into, they've been pretty desperate and months perhaps away from bankruptcy, but there's something called receivership. The state comes in and takes over management, and a lot of times they raise the rate of the assessments so high just to get just to get out of this
Right.
hole that they've done, that people who are there and paying their assessments can't afford the new prices.
Right,
So,
and not only that, I know from the lending background, once it goes into receivership,
Yeah.
now you've got all these owners and the value of the property is
Right.
going down. Their maintenance fees are going up, which also drives the property, the value down. The point I'm trying to make is, that's like the worst thing that can happen,
Yes.
that these associations need to explore their options,
Right.
because if they find themselves in that position, they're gonna be really sorry.
They can be very sorry, and it can be a pretty difficult, they can't get loans, they can't get mortgages in there. It's a pretty tough position.
I would say that, and probably the in-between solution might be bringing in some kind of investors to bail them out a little bit and get some money in the coffers and keep things up and running.
It's a great opportunity for investors. Sometimes associations don't understand that investors can come in, perhaps they can front the money to put liens on the property, and then they are assigned the right to foreclose, but they pay. It's upfront cash flow
Right.
for the associations. And then the investors, of course, investors are happy to look for great opportunities like this, but it's a great win for everybody.
Right, so that being a middle solution, I think the first thing, the way you're explaining, is that if they can sort of nip it at the bud and understand the problem, and that's our money out there and we're entitled to it, but they don't really know how to get to it and what their access is or what it'll cost, and is it going to be worth it to become a landlord? That's when they're going to call you.
Yeah, our office does flat fees on everything. We don't charge hourly rates as much as we possibly can get around it. We do complimentary account reviews for all of the accounts that are collectible at the time as soon as we come in, and then we figure out a game plan and help them get back on their feet.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, you're getting them to fight, and you're going to go fight to get their money.
Yeah.
So let's make sure everybody knows how to reach you so they can solve their homeowners association problems.
We can be reached at 561-231-0640 or Jennifer at jennifercunalawoffice.com.
Thanks very much for
Thank
coming
you
in.
so
Great
much.
information today.